up, guys? Today we're going to do the 10 oracle decks I recommend for beginners. So I have them in sections. I have 3 sections. One of them is where it's kind of just like the one word, one phrase oracle decks, which are fairly easy to learn. The other one I have is like oracle decks that have actual like full-on phrases or sentences. And then the last section I have is ones that kind of give you sort of information for you to study on or for you to research on if you want to learn more about it. So the first section I'm going to do is the kind of like the one word oracle decks that I feel are fairly easy to use. I got three decks right here. We're going to do Messages of the Mermaids first. Oh my god, you can see my camera, which is just my phone. Y'all know I record on my phone. So Messages from the Mermaids. It's one of those, like I said, sort of one word oracle decks. This is all about mermaids and it just has one word on there. I feel like this one is pretty good for beginners because it doesn't give you too much to work with in a sense where you won't be confused being a beginner. Like for this one, you have a mermaid looking out in the distance and the keyword is waiting. Clearly, if you study the picture and all that, you can tell like, all right, waiting. They're waiting for something, they're thinking about something, they're pondering about something. So you kind of have to also make sure to dive deep into the artwork that's in there in comparison with the keyword that they offer you. You want to make sure a deck offers artwork that goes with the keyword or a keyword that goes with the artwork if you're starting off. Hopefully that makes sense. But this is one that I think is fairly easy to use. And of course, all of these decks that why is this upside down? That I'm showing you have guidebooks. This one has a fairly thick guidebook here. It smells so good. And the guidebook also has a lot of information. You have the picture of the card, the keyword, an expansion on the keyword, and then pretty much a story or background on the card itself. So that is why I would recommend Messages of the Mermaids for beginners. Also, like if you like mermaids, then why not get this deck? It's fairly inexpensive too. The next deck is called Sacred Destiny Oracle. This also falls under the first category. It's kind of just like one word or a short phrase per card. I love how these cards feel. They feel so smooth. It's not rose petal finish, but it has like a nice smooth matte finish to it. But you have the artwork and then the one keyword down here. I feel like these decks too would kind of force you to get into using your intuition or studying the artwork and kind of seeing what you feel, see, or hear off of the artwork alone. Like let's say the keywords weren't here. What would you get off of this card itself? Here it says stillness, and you clearly just have a swan chilling in the lake. Actually, is that lake frozen? The lake looks kind of frozen. I mean, if that's the case, well then obviously it goes with stillness because that swan ain't moving if the lake's frozen, right? But you get what I mean, right? You get what I mean. These I feel are also very, straightforward. There's not a lot to confuse a beginner, like too much to read into because you clearly just have your image and just one keyword. I think most of these cards are just one keyword, not like multiple keywords. So it's a good way to start off if you're wanting to learn oracle decks, is to start off with one that kind of just gives you one keyword to go with instead of like 10 keywords, because then you're going to be like, oh my god, well which keyword should I use if I'm getting 10 of them? You know what I mean? And here is the guidebook. It's a fairly thick one as well. It smells so good. Who else likes smelling books? And decks too. So in the book here, you have the card image, you have the keyword that you'd see on the card, and then they also offer information on what's featured on the card. Like here, it is a cliff swallow bird. And then this part here is an expansion of the image itself, like what's used in there. So in this case, it would be the cliff swallow information right here. And then right here, you have an expansion of the keyword itself in combination with the image used right here. A lot of the decks that I'm going to be showing today, well actually pretty much all of the decks that I'm going to be showing today are going to have very good guidebooks to go with each deck for a beginner to read, research, study on, things of that nature. And then the last deck in the first section, which is the one keyword or one phrase section, is Wisdom of the Oracle. This one has a big ass guidebook. It's a bit thicker than the other ones. So there's a lot of info in this one. It smells pretty good too. Here, let's look at the cards first. So these, for the most part, also just have the one keyword. This one is a glossy finish. Some of them have a slight phrase. This one is come to the edge. I have to look at it like this because on my camera it's backwards and the text looks too tiny for me to read it because like I need glasses and I can't read it, so I have to go like this. In case y'all are wondering. But you know, this one for example, come to the edge. On the image here, there's clearly somebody like right there at the edge, right? Kind of self-explanatory, I guess. This one also is a phrase. It says no place like home. And there you have a home. Looks like it's hanging from, I'm thinking a beanstalk for some reason, but it's also kind of making me think of a lighthouse, especially with the light coming out of there. Kind of like showing you the way home. Does that make sense? But this is another deck that I feel would be really good for a beginner to kind of start trusting their intuition or going with like what you feel, see, or hear, you know, based on the artwork that you have in a deck. This book smells so good. All right, sorry. So in this guidebook, you have your image, you have the keyword or key phrase of the card. And oh, the cards are also numbered in this one. I don't know if I mentioned it before. So this is 17, card 17. But in the book, I think because why it's so thick is because each card is given 5 different ways that you can read it, or 5 different messages that you can get from it. You can get more, like I said, if it's based off, if you're reading off of your intuition, you can get like whatever kind of message. Oh my God, I shook my camera way too much there. So in here you have the essential meaning of the card right there. So if you're starting off with this deck, then I'd say maybe just go with the essential meaning to start off with. And then once you're studying more on it, then go with the other messages on here. The next one is the Oracle's message right here. And then you also have a relationship message right there. And you also have a prosperity message and a protection message. So each of the cards have pretty much 5 different depictions or messages that you can get, which is why this book is thicker than the other ones. I think this is probably like the thickest Oracle book that I have, I think. But I feel this one would be pretty good for a beginner because again, because of the keywords not being like, not having too much keywords for you to wonder like, oh my God, well, which one do I pick? But then it also has an expansion of keywords in the book. The book has a lot of information for a beginner to read on and research and things like that, or study. So that's why I feel that Wisdom of the Oracle would be pretty good for beginners. All right, so the next section is kind of like the Oracle decks that have phrases or full-on sentences. And these are actually both animal decks. I'm actually glad I kind of have a variety of decks. They're not all animal decks, even though I do have a lot of animal Oracle decks in my collection. But anyways, this one I'm sure everybody in the mama knows is the Spirit Animal Oracle. My box is kind of dinged up here. Thanks, Amazon. So this one is also by Colette Baron-Reid. I think I showed a deck earlier by Colette Baron-Reid. This is a matte finish. I edged mine in a pretty kind of like sky blue. And for this one, the cards are also numbered, which is pretty nice to look up the card in the guidebook. Actually, let me pop out the guidebook one second. This is also, I feel like this book is probably as thick as the other Oracle deck. What was it called? Wisdom of the Oracle. I think this guidebook is the same thickness as the Wisdom of the Oracle. It smells good too. All right, where were we? The cards, sorry. So these cards, they also have numbers on them, which makes it easier for you to look in the guidebook and find the card if you're having trouble when you're doing a reading. They have a name of the animal, or name of the spirit in this case, the spirit animal. So this one will be vulture spirit. And then you have a phrase down here. For the most part, most of them have phrases or a sentence. It's not really just one word. So this would be nothing is wasted. And if you're also really into learning about animals or working with animal spirits, this is also a good deck to start off with. Now, if you think about vultures in general, all right, what do vultures do? How do vultures act? One thing that I know of off the top of my head, especially going off of the key phrase here, nothing is wasted, is vultures literally do not waste anything when they're trying to eat. They eat like the shit out of everything, like clean. So I think this phrase goes very well with the vulture spirit. But something like that is an example of why this deck would be pretty good for beginners, to kind of help you, especially if you want to learn animal spirits or learn animal energy. This would be a pretty good deck to start off with. This is another one. Oh my God, squirrel spirit. This one says, believe in yourself. Look at that little squirrel. I forgot what kind of squirrel this is, but it's a certain one with like the little pointy fur in the ears. I forgot the name. But the squirrel spirit here says, believe in yourself. So even though the squirrel is very, very tiny, it still gets a lot of shit done. It can still do a lot of things, especially when it comes to collecting nuts. That might seem meaningless to us, but like in the squirrel world, collecting your nuts means something. That sounds kind of wrong. Here we have wolf spirit. This is turn knowledge into wisdom. Oh my God, look at that. The wolf has feathers on its face. Isn't that cool? This is upside down. Oh, I love this bear one because of the jade paw on its chest. What does that say? Brown bear? I'm reading it backwards. Brown bear spirit, take time out. Hey, I was right. Take time out. And this, when I'm thinking of bear and going with this key phrase, it makes me think, oh, hibernation. Taking time out, as bears do when they hibernate. Do you know what I mean? Now, as far as the guidebook for the deck, so in the Wisdom of the Oracle, if you guys remember in the guidebook, it had 5 different messages that you can get off of the cards. In the Spirit Animal Oracle, there's 2 different messages. So you have your Oracle message, and then you have your protection message. And if you look towards the beginning of the book, when you start reading this guidebook, it explains what the creator was trying to go about when it came to Oracle message versus protection message. I think from what I can remember, if you get a card in reverse, they ask you to go off of the protection message. You don't necessarily have to, like it's to each their own, especially if you're starting off. There's no like right or wrong way to really learn oracles or even tarot. It's kind of just like go with your own flow, you know, like you do you boo, like whatever you feel is right for you to read these cards, tarot or oracle or whatever kind of cardomancy. Go with what feels right to you. Just because you're doing something differently doesn't mean it's right or wrong compared to somebody else. I am not a gatekeeper. I am a firm believer of you do you boo, as long as it doesn't hurt anyone or anything, and that includes yourself. So as a beginner though, being a beginner, I do recommend first studying the essential parts of what makes that particular deck. And also looking into the guidebook, like study on what the creator was kind of looking towards when they first made the deck, especially with what each card or what each artwork in the cards mean. And then once you understand that, once you understand the basis of that particular deck, that particular creator's vision and the artwork and things like that, then afterwards you can like stray off on like, oh, intuition or doing it my way, you know? I feel like that would make a reader or even like a beginner, actually an any level reader, that would make you more knowledgeable of the deck that you're using. Hopefully that makes sense. It doesn't hurt to go off of the book first and then stray off. You know what I mean? This book smells so good. So this one is card number 9, which is the Brown Bear Spirit. So we're gonna look for card 9. And by the way, these don't go off of, like, card 9 isn't going to be on page 9. Card 9 is on page 28. So that's why it helps to have like the numbers on the cards here if you're trying to look it up in the book as you're studying. But here we have the brown bear spirit, and it has the key phrase, and then you have your oracle message as well as your protection message here. Just to go back towards why I would recommend this deck for beginners. One, it's because the guidebook, obviously, it's a fat ass guidebook with a lot of information in here. Two, if you're someone who wants to learn on animal energy or animal spirits, this is a good deck to start off with too, because it has a lot of information. The artwork is also very straight to the point. Oh, here's the squirrel again. You pretty much have the animal in there, the animal name, right? And then the key phrase. It's not like a weird looking combination of animals. It's just the one animal, the name, and keyword or key phrase. But I think that's why, or I feel that's why this deck would be pretty good for beginners, is because of those points right there. All right, the next deck in this section of decks for beginners that kind of have phrases in the cards is called Messages from Your Animal Spirit Guides. So this one straight up has like phrases or sentences, and then the artwork of the animal. Here's our guidebook. It's fairly thick, so it does have a good chunk of information. Here's the deck. It does not come edged. I actually edged mine in a gold right there. This has like a weird texture to it. I don't know if you guys can hear that. Sorry. All right, so this is what the card looks like. You have the name of the animal up top. This is the snow leopard. You have the artwork here, and then you have a phrase or sentence down here. And all of them are like that. Animal name up top, image, sentence, phrase down there. This is mountain goat. Here, let's read what the mountain goat is for. There's something out of balance in your life, so do whatever you need to correct it. Now, with mountain goats, because I'm familiar with animal spirits and animal energy in general, the word that stands out to me in the phrase here is balance. Goats in general, especially mountain goats, why does that, why did that sound weird? Especially mountain goats require a lot of balance when it comes to like going uphill or up the mountain or even down the mountain. Actually, I've never seen a goat go down the mountain before. But that's just one thing that stood out to me, and that's because like I'm familiar with animal energy. Balance stood out to me for this being a goat. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's see if we can get another one. This is the zebra. Zebra says, let go of your fear and know that you are safe and protected at all times. Well, automatically, because of fear coming up, and also because of the body language here, like it's kind of looking over its shoulder, it's making me think back on like the whole animal kingdom, how zebras are pretty much food for a lot of predators out there, and how they do have to keep on their guard, looking behind their shoulder. Not necessarily know if they actually do that, but it's just something that I personally kind of picked up right away with reading this down here. So I think this deck would be pretty good for beginners to also help you expand your knowledge on animals themselves, and trying to think of like, okay, well, what in this phrase makes me relate to the zebra, or makes the zebra relate to the phrase? Like, why did they use that for the zebra? You know what I mean? Or like the mountain goat that we saw earlier. Why did they use that phrase particularly for the mountain goat, and how do they both correlate or relate to each other? You know what I mean? It's probably thinking too much into it. Why are a lot of these upside down? No. Why are some of these upside down? I don't even know. This is the cardinal. This says the polarities of your spiritual pursuits and physical pleasures are out of balance. So do whatever is necessary to bring them back into equilibrium. That's a lot for the cardinal. Cardinals, I'm actually not very familiar on. They do stand out a lot though. Like, obviously with them being red too. I can see them being red relating to the whole pleasures part, because it's making me think of fire. The element of fire, wands in a tarot deck, things like that. So with pleasures, it's making me think, you know, see the red in the cardinal, relating it to passion, the element of fire, things like that. I think with time, another upside down one. With time, you'll start to understand and kind of pick that up too when you're using a deck like this. Being a beginner or starting off as a beginner and then going to intermediate, and then before you know it, you'll be an expert reader of these decks. Let's look at the guidebook though. That's enough of the cards. Guidebook. We're gonna smell it, of course. It smells good. So this is the penguin. You have the name of the animal card. You have the phrase here that you would see on the card itself. You have an expansion of the phrase here. And then you have associations towards this animal spirit right here. So these are other little keywords that you have right here that go in tune with the animal spirit here. Wait, that is not for the penguin, that's for the peacock. Oops, the penguin's keywords are on the next page, which is right here. The other one was for the peacock. So just some of the keywords for the penguin. You have determination, respect, agility, willingness, intention. So you have like more keywords to expand upon to relate to the animal that you're working with or with the card that you're working with. So because the guidebook, again, like I said, has a lot of information on the card itself, and it helps you learn about animals in general or animal spirits, because it's helping you learn on a particular subject, I feel this would be good for beginners, especially ones that, like I said, are trying to learn or expand on like animal energy or animal spirits, things of that nature. All right, so now we're on the last section, which is pretty much decks that are focused on a particular subject as well. In this case, I have spells, the moon, and goddesses. So first I'm going to do the goddesses just because I have two of those. So I have these two decks right here for the goddesses. We have the Goddess Power Oracle, and then we have the Legendary Ladies Goddess deck. So these two are good for beginners because they both have a pretty good guidebook. They give you the names of goddesses that you can use to further research on if you're, interested in learning more about goddesses in general or that particular goddess. These are the cards. This one is a matte finish. I edged mine. I don't know if you guys can see the shimmer there. But this one, you have your image of a goddess. You have the goddess name. And then you have a keyword or a key phrase down here. I hope none of these are, upside down. All right, I put some of them right side up, so hopefully we get those. But what was I saying? You have the name of the goddess, the image of the goddess, and then a keyword or a very short key phrase down here. This one is Artemis, and our keyword is focus. In the image here, you can clearly see that Artemis is using a bow and arrow. If you're relating that to their key phrase or keyword, there's this focus. What do you need when you're using a bow and arrow, especially if you're hunting or if you're trying to protect yourself? You need focus to be able to aim and shoot at the target. These cards also have their numbers here, which would make it a bit easier for you to locate the card in the book if you want to expand and learn more about the card when it comes up in a reading. This one is Hestia, I think. Hestia. Keyword is home. I love this headdress here, that looks pretty. Let's look at the guidebook though. This one is not as thick as the other ones. So in this guidebook, there are no pictures. You have the name right here. Kind of like what's in gray would be like the card, I guess, since you don't have your image. So you have the name here. I think this is Danu. Yeah, Danu, the name of the card, the number of the card is 10, but it's not on page 10, obviously. But here you have number 10, Danu, and then the keyword or key phrase that was on the actual card right there. And you have two different messages that you can get when drawing the card per the book. You have your empowerment message right there. And then I believe there's also a protection message. Oh no, an alignment message. you have an alignment message too. And in here, like I said, because it's based on goddesses, they have just a little bit of information on them. Like for example, Danu, they mentioned that it's a Celtic earth goddess. I would never have known that because I don't really know who Danu is, but the fact that this is in here makes me want to know more. It's like Celtic earth goddess, like that's awesome already. So I feel like because the guidebook offers just a little bit of background on each goddess, it allows you to want to, or even just push you to learn more. I mean, if you want to learn more about the goddesses, obviously, but it gives you just enough information to kind of like lure you in on like, oh, I want to know more. Let me research more on Danu, for example. Does that make sense? So it offers just enough information for a beginner to kind of get started into their research to know more about the goddesses. Our next goddess deck was the Legendary Ladies. This deck is kind of pretty tall compared to like your usual oracle size. It's a nice matte finish. I'm not sure what kind of card stack it has, but it does kind of bow a little bit. And I overhand shuffle these, but I think it's just based on the card stock as to why it gets like that. These are the backs. And this one, like the Goddess Power Oracle, you have the name of the goddess and then a keyword. I think for the most part, these are just keywords, not key phrases. And in the book, oops, there's also reversals in here for some reason. In the book, you have, again, just like the Goddess Power Oracle, you have a little bit of information on the goddess to kind of like push you or lure you in to know more or want to know more on them, which would in turn push a beginner or anybody wanting to learn more to do more research, you know? Does that make sense? These are very vibrant though. I love these. The guidebook in here is not as thick as the guidebooks we're used to. It's actually fairly thin. And I love that it's colored though. It's a colored guidebook. You have the name of the goddess, the key phrase or keyword that's on the card. You have your card image. And then I think it's cool that they add the origin of the goddesses on here. In the little paragraph here, it gives just a little bit of information on the goddess themselves, but also relating to the keyword that they used here. So they expand a little bit upon the goddess and upon the keyword that they used. Not too much though, like I said, it's just enough information to get somebody to want to learn more or research that goddess. And I think this one in particular helps a lot too with mentioning the origin of the goddesses. I think that was pretty cool. So that's why I feel like this deck would be pretty good for beginners, especially if you want to learn more about goddesses. The next deck in this section is the Moonology Oracle cards. This deck is really good if you want to know a bit about the moon phases or start learning about the moon phases. I just gotta smell like all the books for some reason again. Let's look at the cards first and then we'll look at the guidebook. So these are the backs. I etched my deck. These are what the cards look like. You have your image here and you have the moon phase mentioned down here, and then you have a phrase right here. One thing that I kind of wish they did is I wish they have like this big, you know, gray, what would you call this, banner here with the information. I kind of wish that wasn't there and they just had the full-on image with like the text maybe outlined in white or something to make it stand out. But that's just one little pet peeve that I have with this deck. But I mean, if you could see, it mentions like the type of moon phases on each card down here along with their phrase. This one is the full moon in Cancer. Hey, I'm a Cancer. So full moon in Cancer. Here obviously you have a full moon. You have the Cancer symbol right there in the moon. And then the phrase here, it says a personal issue reaches a resolution. Here we have a new moon in Taurus. And here you have the moon and you have the Taurus right there. For this one main reason For this one in particular, why I think it's good for beginners, it's because the book mentions a lot of info on, like I said, the moon phases or the types of moons. Like they have so much information here. You have your card, the phrase, and the moon phase that's listed on the card. And then if you look over here, it has an expansion on pretty much the type of card it is or the type of moon phase, along with the phrase that's listed on the card right here. And going up here, and then right there, you guys probably aren't gonna be able to see it that well, but if you get the deck, you'll be able to see it. And then it has an attune message, attuning yourself to that moon phase. It has further expansion on the card itself right here with these little bullet points. And then down here, it has further teachings on the moon phase itself. So this one is New Moon in Aquarius. In the teachings, it says Aquarius is a sign of invention, modern advances, technology, and humanity. So it even gives you information on like the zodiac itself because it's a new moon in Aquarius. See here, new moon in Virgo. It gives a little bit under the teachings of Virgo. Virgo is a sign of health, service, analysis. Its energy is precise and has a feel of the harvest about it. I don't want to read too much of these pages, but I think like this deck is pretty good if you want to learn more about the moon phases and get just a little bit of background on the moon phases, especially the ones that, like we saw earlier, deal with new moon in specific zodiac signs and things of that nature. So I think that's why I would recommend this deck for beginners, is because just like the other ones, it has a lot of information for you to use, study, learn, and expand on. I don't think any of the decks that I've showed today are also expensive. I think all of them are mass market. So probably under 30 or under $20. All right, so the last one in this section is the magical spell cards. So this one I would recommend for beginners if you want to learn more about spells or witchcraft, things of that nature. It also comes with a guidebook here, but let's look at the cards first. So you have the number of the card up here, which you can use to look it up in the guidebook. You have the type of spell and then the spell itself right here. And then you have an art image right here. So this one is Dream Sweet Sleep Deep spell. And the incantation is sleep that's deep and lasts till morn, wondrous dreams for days reborn. Spells I feel like tend to rhyme too, which is pretty interesting. So here we have study, and this one is card number, I think that's 36. Yeah, 36. So you have study, a spell for studying, and your incantation down here. You have your image of somebody who looks like they're studying or reading. And the incantation here is let my mind be clear and strong, let me study well and long. You see how it rhymes? So this one, I feel like it's pretty much straight to the point. I don't think it would really confuse a beginner, especially if you're trying to, you know, learn about spells or understand that these are spell cards. And most of them also on the back have different backings, which I think it's explained in the guidebook. Let's look at the guidebook actually. Oh, this one doesn't smell that good. So this is generally what the inside of the book looks like. You have your card, the number on the card, and then the key name of the card, or in this case, the spell. So this one would be the success spell card. And they expand a lot on the actual incantation itself here. So first it talks about the spell itself. So here it talks about the spell surrounding success and why you would use a spell like that and how you go about using a spell like that, or how you should feel internally or make sure you're kind of aligned in a certain way before you proceed with a spell like this. And then over here they have an expansion of the spell itself in this part right here that you can choose to use. The other thing I feel you can do is you can use this spell or even like this small incantation spell on the card itself as kind of an inspiration to write your own, if that makes any sense, like write your own success spell. They also offer information on certain things or elements you should use within a particular spell. So right here, they mention a ring, they mention ginger root, they mention a sunflower, water, piece of paper and gold ink, things like that. So if you want to like dive deep into, you know, doing this particular spell in general for success, they offer that information here in the book. So that's why I feel like this would be pretty good for beginners, especially those wanting to learn more about spells, spellcraft, casting, things of that nature. So that's why I would recommend this deck for beginners. Well, that was all of the decks that I had. Was it 10? 1, 2, 3, 4. There's only 9 here. This video is about 10. I feel like I need to grab another deck because it's not 10 decks. Hold on. So because I had a brain fart and only had 9 decks picked out for some reason, even though this video was for 10 decks, I went back and I grabbed another one, and it falls within, well, technically it kind of falls within the first section where it's just like a 1 keyword and that's it. But it is an animal deck, so this is for, you know, animal deck lovers, those who want to work with animal energy, animal spirits, things of that nature. So the last deck that I'm going to show you is the Animal Kin Oracle. This is a very vibrant deck, by the way. I haven't edged this one. I need to edge it. These are the backs. So pretty. And I love the watercolors in here. I kind of wish that the image was a bit bigger. These have chunky borders, but what I love is each card has its own legitimate border and artwork in the border, as well as the mandala that's right here. Each of them had their own artwork in there, which I think is pretty cool. But these cards, you have your animal name. So this one is peacock, and then you have your key phrase, and you have your animal here. And like I said, their own personal pretty border and mandala right there. Praying mantis. Oh my God, I remember when one of these like fell on my chest when I was like 7 years old in Mexico. Praying mantis. You have the mantis right there. Keyword right here. Now this one though, I would recommend for beginners because the freaking guidebook has so much information. Like here, let's pick a random page. Here, dragonfly. Name of the card, dragonfly. That's the keyword. Imagination. And then it also has the element that it's associated with. So this one would be water. Right there. They talk a bit about where they usually chill, or where you're most likely to find a dragonfly, things like that. A little bit of information on what they can mean in other places around the world too, or in general. For example, right here, dragonflies choosing to live in and around waterways. We often observe the dragonfly hover gently on surrounding rocks, plants, or on top of the water surface itself. And then it also talks a bit about dragonflies initially. So dragonflies are fast, agile, and can hover in one position before moving quickly in any direction, thus showing us the abundance of opportunities and choices we have at our disposal if we're willing to proceed differently to the way that we usually do. So it talks a bit about like how dragonflies are in general, like physically, like how a dragonfly is, or how a dragonfly moves, or you know, how they live, I guess, if that makes any sense. But it just offers a lot of information on the creatures and the animals. Here, flamingo. One thing that the book touches on for flamingos particularly is the color, right? Flamingos are pink, pinkish. They have various tones of pink. And in here, they offer information on the color pink because it goes with the flamingo. So there's a lot of different information that you get from each card, or from each animal and creature in this deck, in this guidebook. So that's why I feel like this would be a really good deck for a beginner, because of all the information you get off of the guidebook. It's also, how many cards is in here? There's 65 cards, so 65 animals in here. So a good amount of animals for you to start learning about. And if you want to learn more about the animal, obviously, aside from what's in the guidebook, you have like many books out there, the internet at your disposal to look more into that animal in particular. So I think now that makes it 10 decks, right? My bad. At the beginning, I thought I already had 10 decks. I don't know why I didn't. That was my 10 Oracle decks for beginners, or like my recommendations for 10 Oracle decks for beginners. All of the decks that I showed in this video are mass market, so you can find them on Amazon very easily, or like the publisher's website themselves. I think I had decks here from Hay House. I think all of these are from Hay House. Are they? So you can either find these decks on Amazon or on Hay House, because I think like 9 out of the 10 decks that I showed today are from Hay House, apparently. But yeah, those are my recommendations for beginners regarding Oracle decks. If you guys have any questions that I haven't already answered in the video, let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to like the video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!